Maybe you could tell me what it was like in 1939. You were a student in 1939, and that's the year the Germans occupied Poland. What was that like for you? What was it like being in Warsaw when that happened?
Of course, this was vacation, and when we heard that the war started, the first thought was, great, we're not going back to school for another 2 weeks at least. And then, of course, it was so different. The German came to Poland. The war started about our Poland, really, and it was Friday, and Sunday, England and France joined. And we thought we will just, in a few days, will be over, but it wasn't. When the German came, they closed the schools. You were allowed to go only up to age 15, to public school or whatever. But the other education was completely closed. So, and then, even immediately, I would say the terror started, because they tried to eliminate and execute all intelligentsia and people who can really damage the German system. So was no school for a month or two, and then slowly the private classes were organized, which were not allowed at all. And if you were caught, then you were going to private classes which were taking place in private homes. You could finish in concentration camp. We didn't believe the terror can start right away. We just could not believe it. So we forgot that we're not going back to school. War is real, is really real. So and in first few days, the German bombarded almost half of Poland.
Where were you at that time?
I was in Warsaw.
How badly was Warsaw?
Warsaw was destroyed very, very badly. And they were fighting, of course, the forces were... No, I'm sorry, when war started, I was in the... my grandparents in the east of Poland. And I went to Warsaw a few months after. But I don't remember how long Warsaw was still fighting. But after 3 weeks, it was just have to surrender. And the German walked in.
And when the Germans walked in, then what happened for you and your
family? They closed everything. They closed school, they closed stores, they closed everything. They completely, not speaking, even power, electricity was closed.
Really?
So after a few months, after the terror, the Polish underground army was organized, which was one of the biggest in Europe and most efficient. And unfortunately, most people died in this resistance.
You were involved with the resistance?
Yes, I was. You allowed to go when you're 16, but we always said we are 16 or 17. And just what we were doing, delivering messages, newspaper, or when you're working, first of all, everybody has to work. Because if you didn't have certificate, then you work, you will go to the camp. So you work in the factory or somewhere, and in every factory or office was always something which was needed for the underground army, like paint or frame for print. So this was taken by us, if you could take it. But everything almost came to the comical part. For everything was death penalty. But so you get used to it. In the underground movement or resistance, as we call it, it was always organized, and you have only 4 people, you know. And you don't know who's in other group, because if you caught, in case, of course, when they torture you, you can only know 4 names.
Right.
So that's the reason underground always works, 4, 4, 4, or 5, or whatever.
But this was all over Poland?
All over Poland, but Warsaw was the heart of it. Food was very limited, and Warsaw was cut off completely from the country. So it was so many ounces of butter and so many ounces of bread and so on. And the people from the country, the peasants, were bringing food for fantastic prices. And if they were caught, they finished in concentration camp. And during occupation, the German had the, I would say, horrible thing. They were want to catch as many young people as possible who were involved in underground army, and you can walk on the street, suddenly 2 ends are closed, and everybody on the street is taken to the, we call it lorry, to the truck, And parents never heard of them, or maybe sometimes they got ashes from concentration camp.
So this would happen every day?
Every day, but you get so tuned. Then you go and somebody will say, look, don't go this way. You go the other way.
Really?
But as
A
I
little
said,
little
people are
early
so,
warning.
human nature is so resilient, then you can do it.
Right.
I don't know. You can get used to it. I'm not used to it, but for instance, there were boys who were in the group who were executing some German. If they were, for instance, they executed so many Polish people. Mm-hmm. So our boys went to this captain or something. They killed him, and they made. And after every public execution, there were big placard on the wall on the street of Warsaw, and they say, I order to execute 50 people, and the names. And very often mother, or daughter, or husband saw the name of the loved one. And that was it. And immediately, in these places, almost overnight, the flowers, it was almost like, I don't know how to explain, people are going there and all praying. And even now, when you go to Warsaw, there are 100 people on the street, and they said, in this place, 1942, for instance, so many people were executed.
Really, memorials.
And still the flowers are there. I remember when I went to Warsaw from Canada in, I forgot, must be in late 60s,
Okay.
and with my husband, and it's huge square there. And I remember they were always catching there during the war. And I said to my husband, I can't go through. And he said, look, war is over. It's no German there. I mean, terror was almost second nature. I mean, it was all the time. Part of life.
Right.
And you learn to navigate. You learn to live during this terror. But a lot of Polish people were just executed and died.
Right.
During captivity, during the occupation.
During all this occupation, there was the resistance, there was the underground.
The Home Army, yeah.
Right, and that all came to a head in
1944 uprising. It was just enough. So they decided to have uprising.
What was that like? Because
I
you
remember
were involved in that.
I was going home, and at 3 o'clock we supposed to be in certain point. Everybody knew where to go in case of uprising of the. And I was going home, but uprising started early. Somebody slipped, and it started early.
Really?
So you try to go to your units as quick as possible.
It lasted 63 days?
It lasted 63 days. It's so strange when you really take actual part in war, in the war, because one wrong step means just losing your life, and you are gone. Or during the night, when you are waiting for plane to drop food, because from Italy, the English crew were coming and they were dropping food or ammunition for us. You look at the sky and it's so dark. Then you see the stars and you almost want to look beyond the stars. You want to penetrate farther, and oh God, you pray. You pray, then you survive. You pray, then if you get hit, that's what I mentioned to you before, that is quick. And when you hear the gunshot, the bullet around you, you crawl. And you just want to be so small, you want to take so little space on the ground, just then you're touching the earth, you almost taste it. And you know, and you realize, the area is so small, and you call to God, hoping, then He can hear you.
After the uprising, 63 days, you mentioned that 250,000
250,000 people died during 63 days. Crop of intelligentsia, young people. It takes ages to educate them. And they were gone.
Gone like that?
Gone like that.
What happened after the uprising? Were you taken to a camp?
And again, during uprising, of course, as I mentioned before, it's not like regular war. You just fight from house to house. The one house is taken by German, or two houses, and we have to take them. And it's different to take the house, to take the position and hold it. You can take the house, but can you hold it? It's not regular army. And we have homemade grenade, which boys were making the homemade grenade, and also bottle with gasoline, which boys were throwing on the tank. And it lasted 63 days. And then every different part of Warsaw capitulated different time. My part of Warsaw, when we were told there is no shooting anymore, we are surrendering. And there were some boys who committed suicide. And we women, we didn't know what the German will do with us. We were young, and this was war. And they asked the boys to put the arms, the guns, on the pile. It was most sad thing when everyone was going and putting the arms on the pile. And then we had march and march and march, probably 30 miles past Warsaw, and 80% of Warsaw houses were destroyed. Warsaw was on fire. And then we were taken to the station and put in the train which carried the cattle. I don't know how you call it, the freight train. 70 of us, and taken to Germany. And the most moving moment or sad was when we knew, because grass looks the same on the German side and Polish side, it's the same green, but we knew this was border. And we knew we're going away, and we didn't know how long would we come back, what will they do to us. All of us start to sing holy songs and patriotic songs. And we knew at the moment that this grass was already in German and we go into captivity. And we went as far as Berlin. They didn't let us out for 3 days.
Of the train?
There was tiny little window, the train, freight train.
Right.
And what was in Berlin, it was the American, and in English they were bombarding Berlin, and they left us on the station locked. We didn't know what is better, to die from the bomb or just what to do. But we survived. This was 1944, and then we went to captivity. Apart from this crossing the Polish border to Germany, when they took us to captivity, it was like in the movie. The big camp, barbed wire, and 4 towers. Of course, the guard was on the top of the towers. And when they locked the gate, we say, what is going to happen to us? This was the horrible moment when the gate was locked and you are prisoner of war.
How was it when the liberation happened?
We were in camp. Of course, camp was big. We were very hungry, very cold. My weight was, I even wouldn't like to wait so little then. Now, and then suddenly we knew the front is coming. We were not far from Dutch border in Oberlangen. And suddenly we heard, could you hear the shooting? And they say, look, the tank, big tank came through the gate. And there was Polish forces which were fighting together with English. They liberated us. The front was still going on, but we were all liberated.
The Polish forces
the
English forces.
Yeah, they knew the Polish camp is there. And they liberated us. What a joy. Look, right away the Polish flag was on the top of the camp, and it was just unbelievable. We are free. We are free.
What did you do? What happened after that now? You were liberated.
First of all,
where did you go?
There were quite a few girls wounded.
Right.
I remember one girl, she was a student of dramatic school, and she lost eyesight during uprising, and she was always walking with the other girl who lost her hands
really?
When she and other group were making homemade grenade. They were always walking together. And there were quite a few wounded, I would say about 50. And they right away were flown to London. And we stayed in camp longer. And of course food came right away.
But you were safe there then?
Oh, we were safe. And we were free. And the forces came right away, and since my family was with the government, so few of us the special one.
Uh-huh.
They always are not what you know, only who you know. Went to France, to Paris, to Belgium and to France. One of my family member, he was in charge of Polish forces in France, so we very quickly, and then with the choice where to go, to the Navy or to the Air Force, but Navy uniform was so beautiful. I choose the Navy.
Okay. But you have more choices then than you had for so long.
Oh, yeah.
It must have been just a whole new world in a way for you then. So you were in France.
Yes.
And you were in the Navy.
Yes, but my family, my uncle was general, and he was in England, and the other was in France, so we right quickly went to France, and from France, with special American ship, we went through the Channel and to England, to Portsmouth, and joined the Navy.
What was it like in the period, the 4 or 5 years after the war?
We were assigned to the certain schools, or to, I was working with the commander, and then I got scholarship to School of Art.
Really?
But in the meantime, I met my husband, who was also in the Navy, and of course, I wouldn't miss the opportunity.
When did you meet him?
Where?
When did you meet Dr.?
I met the doctor in the Navy in Okehampton, in Devonshire, in England. He was one of the 2 doctors in the base.
And eventually, that of course,
and
led
we got
to
married,
coming to Canada. In
yes,
1951, you came to Canada.
51, yes. Doctor was also working in the English hospital, where he got his diploma in gynecology and obstetric, and then we came to Canada.
Now you've been in Canada since
51.
To come over here, and now obviously a younger generation that.
Well, I was young then.
Oh, of course. I'm thinking right now though. 1998 generation, my generation.
Oh yes, of course.
Who have never experienced a war, but you find it's important to speak to people and tell them about this and tell this story. Why is that so important to you?
Even when I came here, when I started Girl Guides, 1957, I was telling guides at that time about the war only in very quiet and short stories at that time. Because last war was the war who's supposed to finish all war. And we were fighting for survival. Canada was taking part. England was, the whole world was taking part in the Second World War. It was important for you to know what sacrifices were done, because you can live now free. Don't take anything for granted like we did before. Like I was saying, what forces? This is so important, and and in guides sometimes make me really cross. Oh, I wouldn't go because it's raining. What it means raining? I went through the war. It was more than raining. There were death, there were shooting, there were dead people, there were wounded people, and we were young, age of Brownian guides. And it's so important. I'm very happy that here in Port Hawkesbury, the Legion men and teacher are trying to tell young people what it is. Because you never know. You never know.
Do you find young people want to hear this?
Very much. When I was speaking at school here, to the young people, grade 10, 9, they were asking questions because they see us. It's not just somebody said who was 10 years ago here or 50 years ago. We are a life example. Then we survive.
Right.
We can tell them how it was, and it's true.
We
Maybe when we die, the other generation wouldn't believe so easily.
But perhaps that's one of the main reasons why it's important that you do this, because the more young people that can hear your story, that story.
And it's not only mine, there are 100 of us. And I think, and I'm so happy that children, they want to listen. They ask not silly questions, very serious questions. For almost every day what we did and how we do it. And they respect the veterans. It's not just old man, he was on the war 50 years ago. They respect him or her.
The more often these personal stories are told, that story gets carried on.
Oh,
obviously.
definitely.
So it's
definitely.
Obviously very important that you pass along your experiences. So eventually they
and
can pass along.
I'm very, very glad and flattered, and I was asked to do it. It's really, really privileged to be able to tell you and young people how was that.
Oh, I appreciate
when Canadians were there too. They were dashing and young, they were coming and on jeep, But of course we return. We're not wounded. But think about 100 who didn't, or the one who are wounded and invalid. They should have support. But Canada was always good to veterans, always, from beginning. as government as such, because they look after the veterans.